I'm Alex Seay with Bird Law Group. Welcome back to another episode of Bird's Eye View. I'm your host, Alex Seay with Bird Law Group, and today I have the pleasure of having a guest, Natanya Brooks. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get into the hard questions, I'll just give you a chance to introduce yourself. Tell the audience who you are, what you do.
My name is Natanya Brooks, and I am from Georgia. I grew up here. I'm an attorney now. I do plaintiff's personal injury, so I represent people who have been injured. And I think today we're going to talk a lot about a nonprofit that me and Alex helped start, but I've also started a foundation, a 501c3, and then this in particular nonprofit is a 501c4. So I have found myself getting involved in a bunch of extracurricular activities.
Right. And not to mention a mom.
Yes, I have two daughters. Yeah. One is 12 and one is 9, and they're great. And I bring them around to all of the things and hope that they're picking up, something and learning something.
I love that. I've seen your firm's social media where you have your daughters at the office. And if I'm not mistaken, you have like a special spot in the office to make them comfortable, right?
Yeah, that's right. I actually built a playroom right next to my office so that they had a little spot. And then now they have, since they've grown up and they've officially been hired to do some work at the firm. So they're helping me calendar, they restock, so they make sure there's coffee and there's chips in the office and all of that. And they scan in the mail, so now they have gotten an official office also.
I love that. Yeah. So at what age can I bring my daughter and my son to work to do things?
So there are exceptions. So if you have a child, if you're working for a family-run business, then they can legally work. And so I try to teach them real-world skills that will translate into whatever they decide to do.
I love that.
And then also they get to make money. They want to be independent. They want to buy certain things. And I say, if you work and you do a good job, you can buy whatever you want.
Right. Oh, that's great. It's a whole different way of earning an allowance, right? A more real world way of doing it.
Exactly. And days when they're tired and they don't feel like it, I say, you want a job? You got to go in anyway.
Right.
Get the job done.
Right. There's not a whole lot of days off in the hats that we wear.
No, there's no days off.
No days off. So one of the main things I wanted to talk about today was the 501c4 that we are both on the board of, along with Kara Phillips, Voices of Families for Justice. Kara and I have talked about that on a past episode, but since then, a lot of things have happened. So just kind of from your perspective, why be involved with VFJ and what is it to you?
So I think if I go way back, it kind of happened from how I grew up, my family, and I'm also interested to hear the same thing from you. But my dad is a huge inspiration for me, and he worked for the National Conference of Community and Justice, and he was always doing nonprofit work his whole life. And he taught me through just watching how important it was to be involved in the community and to help others who truly needed it. And then my mom was a social worker. So for 42 years, she helped people with drug and alcohol abuse. So that's just the household I grew up in. And it was always something that my family was involved in. So I think that just naturally became something that I saw was an important part of life. So my dad, he would always say, you should be a lawyer and you should, be involved in politics. And I had zero interest. So I was focused on swimming, and that's all I did was swim. And even when I was in college, I never thought about either of those two things. So really it's happened again, just naturally, that I've kind of rolled into this. And specifically with doing work down at the Capitol, we ran into tort reform last year with our law firms and clients. And so I really felt pulled, very passionate about sharing and educating what I knew the law was going to do to people in Georgia and how unsafe it was going to make Georgia. And because I knew what actually would happen in court and what would actually happen to people who are injured, I could share that. And I had no clue how to do it or when or where, but I just went down there and I figured it out. And then it became something that I still feel. It's like I feel it like in my chest. Like I need to help, because I don't think most people understand what's happening in court.
No.
And so I feel like very lucky that I can help to explain that this is actually what's going to happen and this is going to be the effect on people. So I really want to share my knowledge of the law with our legislators. And I have found that having clients who have actually been through the process and having them speak directly to legislators and to the public about what it's like from someone who actually went through it, is just so amazing. And I just remember hearing people talk in the Capitol. You could hear a pin drop, and I just felt like we got to do more of this, and we got to bring real stories and real people down here to tell what the effect on real Georgians is.
I think that's so important. I agree with everything you've said. And one thing that struck me last year, I was not down at the Capitol as much as you and Kara were, and I intend to be more involved this year. But when you all were down there last year and tort reform is happening, something that struck me is I was talking to people about it who weren't directly involved, and the number of people who just didn't know that it was happening. Take it all the way back to, I can't remember those cartoon videos that we were subjected to in elementary school, but like how a law is passed. Like the little cartoon bill that hops around the steps. I don't think people know that, right? And what does it mean to go down to the Capitol, right? Like we hear people say it all the time, but what does that mean? What are you going down there for? What's the purpose?
So, some of the things that I learned is that our lawmakers in Georgia, they are in session January to April. And this is different in all states. So in some states, you're in session many more months. It's actually a number of days that it ends up being from January to April, pretty much. But some states it's different. Some legislators are like full-time employees. They can make a salary. Here it's a small amount of money that they get paid to do this work for a certain number of days. I would say a majority of our lawmakers, they have other jobs they're doing. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know when they're in session, you can go and talk to them. If you are a constituent, and then you have to know who is in the House representing you and who is in the Senate representing you. But you can send a note and they will come out and they will talk to you and they want to hear from you. This is what's going on in my neighborhood, and these are the issues that are important to me, and I'm one of your constituents and I voted for you, and then your vote should represent what is best for us. There's a process to do it, and I saw how to do it, and then I saw how to help other people do it. So come down here and find out who is your legislator, and looking at your address, and then let's send them a note, and then they come out and then they talk and you share your story with them. And I found that the lawmakers were very interested to talk to the constituents, but you have to get people down to the Capitol to do that.
Right. Let's start first with access. The Capitol is open to everyone, right?
And there's actually a schedule. So now I know, even we're going to go down there this week, but the legislators are not in session. So they're having budget meetings or committee meetings. If you want to see them, you're not going to be able to go to the ropes. You have to prearrange a meeting. So we ended up hiring a lobbyist, and our lobbyist is able to reach out to different people and schedule meetings. And then we start to create our own relationships and know people and then reach out to them. So you also need to look at their schedule. And are they going to be in the middle of some other type of committee meeting, or are they going to be on the floor and you can send them a note? So you kind of have to look ahead and see what they're doing and if they're available.
If somebody wants to figure out who their representatives are down at the Capitol, there is a website where you can go, put your address in. We will link that here so you can click, put your address in. You can figure out who represents you down at the Capitol. Okay, so in the House and in the Senate, you can figure that out. And then once you know who your representatives are, then you can go about looking at the schedule and what's going on and try to arrange a time to meet with them. There's also contact information for their office that's available online too, right?
Right, and I think another thing that's important is we were down there last session during an emergency, and we were frantic and trying to find people. So now that there's not an emergency, we want to create relationships. We want to get to know people. You don't want to be running every time to someone because you need something. You want to be down there, how can I help you? What do you need? What are some issues? Like, is there some education or information that I can help you with? you want to be a resource and get to know people before you're going down there and asking for help with something yourself.
Right. It sounds like some of the takeaways, first and foremost, are everyone should know that the Capitol is a public place that you can go to. It's not reserved for the people who make our laws. You can go to this website, put your address in, and figure out who your representatives down there are. And it's important, I think, to create relationships with them. And like you said, before you need something, right? These people are making the laws that affect your everyday life and govern what happens and how things are done in Georgia. Be involved, I think, is probably the takeaway, right? When you were talking earlier, you mentioned something I don't know that everyone is familiar with, and you talked about the ropes. What are the ropes?
They are just it's literal right. ropes where it ropes off. If you're going to like a premiere of a movie or something, it's just like that. It's an area where you aren't allowed to cross, but that's where all the legislators come out. So they come off of the floor where they're voting on bills, and they're behind the ropes, and then you just stand literally at the rope and you talk to them. And you're just having a conversation, and we can post some pictures and show you what it looked like. But it's just literally a conversation. That's all it is.
Right. What can VFJ offer to people who want to be more involved?
Yeah, so we want to take people down to the Capitol. We want to take clients to the Capitol. We want to take other attorneys to the Capitol. We want to take your mom to the Capitol. Anyone who's interested, right? Or your kid. Like, I want to take my kids down there and show them everything. So anything that you would be interested in doing, we are available. This session, we are trying to be at the Capitol once a week. So a variety of different things, whether it's meeting with somebody or going to the ropes or meeting with another advocacy group. But we want to be down there every week. So anyone who's listening and wants to get involved and is like, you know what, I want to know how to do this so then I can help other people and I can show other people, I can take my clients, then let us know and we'll go down there, meet you there, and show you everything we know. And then hopefully you learn even more and you're teaching us, and we're just working together to allow for better access to our legislators.
Anybody can be involved in VFJ, right? We want people who are lawyers. We want folks who are not lawyers. Anyone and everyone can be involved in Voices of Families for Justice and help give this platform and access to the people who are making our laws. Are the folks who are making our laws, are they all lawyers?
No. You don't have to be a lawyer to be a lawmaker. And I remember a specific conversation I had with a lawmaker down at the Capitol explaining the law and what tort reform was going to do. And this lawmaker said, well, I'm not a lawyer, so, I can't understand that. And I said, well, you don't have to be a lawyer, but you have to understand and think through it and get with attorneys to help you see what it would actually do and what the outcome in court would do and then what the aftermath would be. So, going back to your original question, of course we want lawyers because we need to explain how things work in the court system. The court system is complicated. There's certain things that we can't do in a trial, things that are crazy. And so we have to help elected officials understand that. It's not that easy. These are things we're not allowed to do in trial, and this is what happens in the trial, and this is how long it then takes for an injured person to get an outcome. So we can talk through that as lawyers, but non-lawyers are even more important to this group. So we want non-attorney advocates to come down and share your stories. That's super important. And I know a lot of people who want to get involved that feel like, I don't know what I would say.
Right.
And your story is super important. So your life experience and what happened to you does actually move the needle.
And for the folks who are out there and listening and thinking, I don't know what I would say, I don't want to talk to a bunch of people in suits, this sounds really uncomfortable, what level of support could VFJ offer them? What are some resources or other ways they could be involved if maybe, face-to-face conversation isn't their thing?
Right. So everybody has situations they thrive in and situations they want nothing to do with.
Right. Yes.
Really honor that. So if you would rather write about your experience, we are actually, the next time we go down to the Capitol, we're going to be speaking with legislators, but we are also going to be giving them letters. So if you would rather share your story through a couple paragraphs of a letter, you could do that. If you would like to go onto social media and be live more to the public and share your story that way, then we can do it through social media. If you're more of a one-on-one person, we can have a conversation. If you want to be in a meeting, we're going to be scheduling meetings, breakfast with a number of people. And if you like a stage and a platform and you've been through something that you really want to share and you want to see that it has an effect on a number of people, then you could share your story more broadly. So anything you want to do, we're going to honor. We're not forcing anyone to do anything they're uncomfortable with. And we would say, or just come down and watch. Yeah. And then just see, hey, maybe next time I would want to try this. Because I think just being there, you then want to be part of it. So I would say that's the number one thing, is just come down, and you won't be expected to do anything or say anything, and then just let things happen organically.
And you mentioned trying to explain the impact that last year's tort reform bill was going to have in the courtroom, right? How it was going to play out to a lawmaker, and that lawmaker saying, well, I'm not a lawyer, I don't understand those things. Did that lawmaker vote on that law?
That lawmaker voted for tort reform.
Yeah. So I was afraid that was going to be the answer. That's why it's so important, y'all. You've got folks down there that are representing you and admittedly not understanding the practical effect of the laws that they're voting for. And sometimes they're not going to listen to people like us, right? They need to hear from folks who are impacted by these laws, from people who have been injured due to no fault of their own, or their family's been impacted by the negligence of someone else. I think that's the only thing that's going to make a difference.
The other thing I wanted to say is this is happening all over the U.S.
Yeah.
So we aren't just thinking about Georgia. We're thinking about our friends in Indiana, our friends in New York that are dealing with the same type of legislation. So we want to be here as a resource for anybody who needs help and is battling this in their state. And we want to offer everything that we've learned, everything that's worked, everything that didn't work, what we think is important, resources. And so we want to help anybody in the nation that could benefit from what we learned last session and what we've learned so far this year.
Why do you think it's important for this organization to have the foundation that we've started building, and what's a lobbyist going to do, right? Sometimes we hear lobbyists, and I think some people's heads go to people who are just paid off by big people to get their way, right? So I want to dispel that a little bit and talk about what it means for VFJ to have a lobbyist and how that can help people.
Right. Our lobbyist in particular is actually someone that I've known for over a decade and had no clue we would end up running into each other in this context. And it was like a shock when I got on the Zoom and saw his face and like, oh my gosh, I know you. From law school. So, I mean, he's just he's an attorney, a lobbyist, but he has just worked out of the Capitol and is interested in politics and is able to get meetings and has relationships with people on, every walk of life, both sides of the aisle, is able to arrange for meetings for us to share information. I mean, that's what he does. And it's been a great help. We have a lot of work to do. This is a lot. And it's not something that a single person can do. And it's not something that can be done with individual efforts. And there has to be some type of centralized group that is planning strategically, here are the things that we need to do this entire year. It's not just the legislative session. I mean, we have to stay involved the entire year in all kinds of ways to advocate, in all kinds of ways to work with other nonprofits. And so it is not only do you need multiple people working together, but you need committees and a board, and you have to share different responsibilities. So we hope to grow, and the more people that we have that are united in the cause, we can help more people, and not just in Georgia and other states as well.
I am so thankful to you for your leadership and all of the things that have been required in making VFJ legit. I would be lost. I'm just going to put that out there. But the actual organizing of this organization has been something that's really stuck with me. I'm really excited to be involved, and I think it's hopefully going to be impactful as we continue to grow. So we've mentioned a few times, alluded to last session in tort reform, and we've had some episodes on that. I think it's been talked about, but a couple of the aspects of that reform that were passed last year, including trying to limit what we can say on behalf of our clients in court, letting the opposition be able to talk about how health insurance paid for medical bills, but we can't talk about how there's insurance for the negligent actor to cover their negligence. I mean, those types of things. How have you seen that play out? What have been the real world impacts of that in your practice and for your clients?
Sure. So all of the laws that were passed benefit insurance companies and corporations and big companies. I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah.
Nothing that was passed actually helps a real person. It just doesn't. So it's all stuff that's going to line the pockets of insurance companies, make them more powerful, give companies that are doing the wrong things immunity. For example, if a out-of-state company, a bunch of venture capitalists and funding companies, they come and they buy an apartment complex, and they don't put a manager in there with feet on the ground. They just buy it, and then they just start taking money from the people who live there, and they allow gang violence to start happening, and they don't care who comes in and when they come out. It becomes a wild, wild west, and someone comes in and they get shot. And the whole time, this out-of-state company has just been collecting money. They don't care about safety. They actually send their security guards away. That is now not only allowed and okay in Georgia, but that out-of-state company that owns this apartment complex is immune from ever being responsible at all, even a tiny bit, for what happened to that person who came into that complex. Now, it used to be that if you allowed your property to have a bunch of dangerous things happening on it, then you could be held partially responsible for that.
Right.
A jury can say, you know what, I do think that there was a criminal actor here, but I also think you were taking people's money, you were letting them think that they were safe on your property, you knew all this was happening, and you got rid of security. So I think you actually were a problem in this too. And so the company, the property owner, would have to get security, and they would have to care about the safety on their property.
Right.
Now they're immune and they can't be held responsible at all. So what does that do to a premises in Georgia? An apartment complex, a parking garage, a bank. What does that do? It's not going to be as safe. And if there is some criminal that is doing something over and over and over and over, the owner doesn't have to do anything to make it safer for an innocent person who comes onto the property not knowing what's going to happen. So, I mean, this is the real effect on real people, and it's just allowing big companies and big corporations and insurance companies to make more money and have immunity and no accountability on them.
I mean, it sounds like that the impact of some of the, quote, I even hesitate to call it reform, because that makes it sound like it's helping people, but it's not. I mean, it's been to make places in Georgia, public places, less safe.
That's exactly right.
I heard the bill of goods being sold to folks last year, that it was for the people's benefit, and just haven't seen anything come out of this bill, this tort reform bill, that benefits people at all. And, you know, one thing that's been talked about recently, and actually started towards the end of last year, they were ramping up is what it felt like, is that by putting these laws in place that protect businesses, the way the people are going to benefit from this is they're going to see the cost of insurance go down. Was there anything from your experience down at the Capitol last year and reading these laws that made it so that anything about that capped insurance premiums or mandated that insurance premiums had to go down?
Right, so that was how the law was brought to light, is, it's going to help people save money on insurance, and that's just a lie. So down on the floor, there was an amendment introduced that said, if you say okay to this tort reform bill, then insurance rates should be capped at the rate that, they would go up just with inflation, but they should be capped then. Mm-hmm. If that's what the purpose of this law is. That got voted down.
So we're hearing out of, one side of the proponents of this reform, hey, this is going to save you money on your insurance. And then so the folks on the other side were like, all right, well, if that's really what you want to do, let's make that a part of the law, right? And then they said no.
Right, and then after that, they stopped presenting tort reform as a way that would lower your bills, your insurance bills. And we didn't hear that argument anymore after they realized that then we're going to ask for an amendment to include that. So that just wasn't the purpose. And we called them out, and it still got passed through. and it has not lowered insurance rates. And if you look at states where tort reform has happened, their insurance rates are higher because the insurance company now has more power. It's literally the opposite.
Did you see any impact from the people who came down and were given the floor and able to speak about their experiences when they've been injured by someone else or a victim of sexual assault? Any impact on the laws that were being proposed? Were they heard? Is it worth it for the people that are listening,
Yes. So we saw real change actually happen directly from someone who could have been a victim, but we would say from victim to victor. Yes, that they came down to the Capitol, they spoke about what happened to them. In particular, we had a number of sex trafficking victims who came down and spoke about these motels that were allowing sex trafficking to take place, and they were a victim of that. And they told their stories, which, they were heartbreaking stories. And they shared them with a number of legislators, and actually the law ended up carving out an exception for sex trafficking. So sex trafficking victims could have some protection that they would not have gotten if they had not come down to the Capitol and shared their story. And of course, we wanted protection for someone who was also sexually assaulted or someone who was murdered, or we wanted more, and we still do, and we're still trying for more. But that small group would have never been recognized if they had not come together and spoken up and shared their stories. And they did an incredible job and were so brave and courageous. And we saw it with our own eyes that it got them a spot in Georgia law that they did not have before that protected them.
And, there's session just started, so we don't know what all is going to hit or what all is going to be proposed or out for vote or consideration this year. But if you were forecasting based on your experience last year, do you think that there are going to be proposals for additional laws that would continue to impact a person's ability to access the court if they're hurt by somebody else?
Yes, absolutely. I think that there are a number of big businesses and corporations and insurance companies that do not want to be held accountable. And if they can make an injury to a person just a line item in a budget sheet that they can afford, then they're not going to put safety mechanisms in place. The tort reform bill last session was 8 different sections. It was extremely complex, and it talked about trial, it talked about premises. There were so many things that it hit. So little tiny pieces that will affect someone's right to get in front of a jury and to have the courthouse doors open to them could be slipped into a different law and put into a bill that you would never even think it would be in. Is very sneaky. You have to be reading all the bills that are coming down and be listening, and you have to attend the hearings for the different committees for judiciary and see what's going on and ask questions. And then what we started doing last session was to start to speak at them and start to ask questions and start to send people up to tell their stories. And until doing that, it's hard to uncover, okay, here's the real motive and here's actually what's going on. But there are going to be laws that affect Georgians and their right to get into a court in every session, I believe, forever. So we have to be down there watching.
I guess the message is that getting folks down there to give real life examples of how someone else has harmed them and it was no fault of theirs is going to be important. Not only was it important last session when we knew the enemy we were facing, right? We saw the bill, but also even now, because based on the momentum and efforts from last year.
Our laws are here to protect people. So we need to look at families, we need to look at women, we need to look at those who are vulnerable, and we need to hear their stories, what happened to them, and then what was the process going through the court system, and what were the things that they had to deal with the insurance company, what were the things that they couldn't say in court. And so they have to share their stories of what happened to them and then what the aftermath was, so that we can change things to make it better, and we can stop things from slowing down the process and making it unfair for them.
So we are, Voices of Families for Justice is looking for attorneys, because attorneys have clients and you have former clients and you've represented people who have been injured due to no fault of their own or are currently going through a case where so the case is over or there's a case pending, right? So we need the lawyers who handle those types of cases. Make the introductions to your clients, help get them involved, to your former clients, to people that you've had to turn away because our new laws don't provide an avenue to justice for those folks anymore. We also need folks who are listening who may have not had a lawyer, but you were hurt and you didn't know you could bring a case, right? You didn't know that anybody would have to be held accountable for what happened to you. I think those are the stories that we are really looking for. I'm sure I'm leaving something out though.
Well, I'll give a couple examples.
Yeah.
And then I want you to give
That's helpful.
some too, because I do think that it helps. But we had one young lady come down. She had been rear-ended. And so she was just driving on the highway. She had dropped her daughter off at daycare. She was rear-ended, and actually 2 cars ended up hitting her. Her insurance company stepped into the shoes of the defendant, and she had to then go against her own insurance company. And so telling that story and being up there and standing up in front of the committee and saying, this is what happened, this is how long it took. I was having to go to trial against my own insurance company for a serious injury where I was rear-ended. So that's one story. I mean, we had another woman who came down. She went to a grocery store that everyone here would have heard of, and the owners knew that there was some criminal in the parking lot that was causing problems. They didn't warn the customers. They didn't do anything about it. They didn't call security, and she was actually abducted by that person from this grocery store parking lot where everyone that worked there knew that this could happen. I mean, her life was changed, and she told her story. And I know you have some clients coming down to share what happened to them when they were at the hospital, and right. I think that's another good example.
Right, so we're talking about trying to summarize it, right? You've got insurance companies and large corporations down at the Capitol using their money and their power to talk to lawmakers saying, it costs too much to do business in Georgia. We need protection from being held accountable for when people get hurt, and we could have prevented it. And I think among that group, we talked a lot about insurance companies, but it's also like the hospital associations. And that's near and dear to what I do as a medical malpractice lawyer. We've got folks down there saying, you know, if a doctor makes a mistake, there needs to be limits on what that mistake should cost, right? And going to something you said earlier, it makes a person's life or a person's injury a line item in a budget for a business. That hardly seems like accountability. It seems like a license to just do whatever you want because you can project for it. It's part of your business plan. I mean, I don't want my health and safety or my children's or my family's or my friends' health and safety to be part of a hospital corporation's business plan. I want it to be thought of and considered when they're developing, you know, policies and procedures and putting patient safety first. And if a mistake happens, I want to know that my family and my friends are protected. But what most people don't realize is you've got the folks behind all of this who have control of that down there saying, no, we need immunity, we need a cap on our liability. And they're doing it all in the name of access to health care, which is just about as nonsensical as saying your insurance premiums are going to go down with tort reform. So yeah, I mean, we've, just as an example, from the medical negligence side of things, we have clients who are coming down actually to the Capitol with us for Maternal Health Awareness Day. To talk about how the maternal care that they received was inadequate. Mistakes were made, things were missed, and unfortunately, they lost their daughter. Just hearing their story, even though I do this all day, every day, it's impactful to me as a lawyer, and I can only hope that it will be impactful to the people who are considering these proposals from hospital associations and insurance companies to curtail or somehow limit the access that these injured folks have to holding people accountable. I mean, that's the only thing I think we can hope for.
Yeah, I mean, our number one goal is to make Georgia safer.
Yeah.
So if there is...
And we actually mean it.
Yeah. If there's no accountability, then no one cares about safety. So that's the whole goal, is that you're protected, that you walk into a hospital, that your safety really matters. You're walking into a building, your safety really matters. You're on the roads, your safety matters. So if there's no accountability, then there's not going to be safety.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm proud to be a part of VFJ to help work towards that goal, hopefully achieve the goal of a safer Georgia, and be sure that we educate and keep people informed about what's happening down at the Capitol. It's happening on your behalf, you know? I mean, that's another thing I don't think people consider. So if you're listening, please stay connected. Please share this with your friends and your family. Get plugged in with Voices of Families for Justice. I've linked all the information below. It's available on our firm's Instagram as well, in the link tree, link in our bio. We need your voices. We need your support. We need you to help spread the word. And in order to keep the lobbyists that we have, to keep our social platform going, to keep getting our message out and really make an impact, we need your donations too. There is a quick, easy donate here button or donate button on our website. Reach out to anyone at my office, anyone on VFJ, on our website, and we will get you connected if you have any issues. We really appreciate your support. Please follow us to stay tuned and stay updated and stay plugged in. And our goal is to keep everyone informed and educated about what's going on at the Capitol during session and beyond, because I think education and bringing people together and people's voices are the only ways that we're going to make real change. Voices of Families for Justice.
Because your voice matters.